Hello, it's Paul here from the 4Ps, and I'm joined today by Steve Botham, who is from an amazing organisation called Gather, which is part of the Movement Day initiative, which some of you may well have been at the event in Westminster, I believe, back in 2017, so 3 years ago now. So Steve, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about some of the work that you're involved in and encourage people as we seek and pray for the peace and prosperity of places at this time?
Yeah, my background, I live in Birmingham. I'm part of the steering group that helps Gather to plan things across England, and we're linked in with Movement Day, which is a global movement, just so many things happening in cities across the world. And like everybody, we're going, well, what's happening at the moment? How do we help prepare and shape for a very changing world, changing scenario? So part of our task really is to help some of that thinking and work with churches and individuals, because one of the key things that I think we're seeing change is this whole thing about, it's not just about church, it's about the people of God, the ecclesia being sent out to be a blessing. Where's God put us? What's God's call on us in this changing time?
Excellent. So what are some of the things that you're picking up as you talk to churches across the UK and church that's actively involved in being a blessing within the places where they are? You know, we're living in probably the strangest times ever. What are some of the things that you're picking up, and what are some of the challenges that you're seeing?
I think one of the most profound things that's really impacted me is a book called Scattered Servants, which is fairly new. Things he talks about is, instead of church planting, he talks about people planting. And he says the kingdom of God is actually a movement of people who are being planted into different places. And actually we need to move into a better understanding that God has planted us there, not to do the same, but to bring in a real sense of kingdom, of encouragement, support, wisdom, peace. Peace is such a key thing at the moment, because so many people are obviously traumatized by the uncertainty.
Absolutely. And we were just discussing before we started recording about mental health, unemployment, the fear of unemployment, and part of our vision, and I'm sure part of the Gather and Movement Day vision, is just around encouraging, supporting businesses in local places so that the economy remains strong, so that people aren't faced with unemployment. And you know, the church has a massive role in that, not only to pray, but just to be active in actually getting out into its community and being part of its community.
Yeah.
You know, so any thoughts on that, Steve?
Yeah. Again, one of the key phrases, scriptures that's come through for me, and it ties in with a lot of things, is from Proverbs. Actually, just repeatedly talks about seeking wisdom and understanding. And you're going, well, our source for wisdom and understanding is to say, am I spending time in the presence of God? And am I expecting God to give me fresh ideas and fresh ways of thinking? So that whole sense of, actually all of us can be Christian entrepreneurs, because God can take what's important to us, what we're passionate about, and give us some ways of using that properly. That's not to say, I mean, obviously, that everything's going to be successful at a time like this, but it might be that we've got some ideas that help carry us through a difficult time. So an example for me is we've got some people in our church that run a small bakery, and they hit the whole lockdown thing and where do we go? And they have a Christian who's investing in the business, and together they prayed, and they felt actually they needed to invest in the business. And it's countercultural, isn't it? And so they bought £10,000 piece of added equipment, and they started to market what they were doing, and they really are very, very good cakes and things. They started to market it more proactively. They created a delivery service. The delivery comes in a really nice box that gives you it just gives you a good sense of, I'm being presented with something that's worthwhile here. And they found that their business turnover has actually increased during the lockdown because of the ideas they've been putting into place.
And is that a Birmingham-based bakery?
Yeah.
Are we allowed to know the name of it?
Yeah, it's called Early Bird. And people across the country, it's worth finding out that their cakes are.
Wonderful. We'll put a link, if they've got a website, we'll find it and put a link, because part of the vision of the 4Ps and of Movement Day is just to to get alongside people that are running businesses, to support them, to stand with them, to pray for them, to buy things from them. And I don't need any excuse to buy a cake. Always good to buy cake. No. And I enjoy finding local bakeries and supporting them in what they do.
Yeah.
So where's Movement Day heading in this time? Because I was part of the, I think there were 4,000, 5,000 people on a Zoom call, which was a lot more than the two here now.
That's right.
You broke Zoom, did that Movement Day call, because the breakout rooms didn't work.
That's right. Well, it was one of the early attempts at something so big, but yeah.
Yes.
I think in some ways, you know, I just find it very moving when we're talking to Christians in India, for example, who've pastors have had no income. Their congregations are struggling. Christians are finding in lots of different countries that they're being treated as second or third or fourth class citizens and not getting access to support. And so when you go, we've got problems, there are many countries where things are much, much worse, but where people's Christian faith is really sustaining them through very challenging times.
And of course, this is a worldwide problem, and poorer countries, third world countries like India and Africa, and you know, they're going to feel the effects of this much longer than I guess we in the west of UK and Europe and are going to feel it. And I think that's probably going to be a mission field and a support field that's needed for years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you take places like Africa where their hospitals are small, the equipment and resources are almost non-existent, but then they seem to have had some survival mechanisms because of experience with other things before. But then their economies, it doesn't take very much to wreck an economy completely.
That's right. That's right. So you're finding any signs of hope for what you do? Is there hope in Birmingham? Is there hope in some of the perhaps poorer communities in our inner cities? You know, what do you find the picture is like in the Midlands?
I think in some ways, and this comes from work I've done in the past, you've done similar stuff, Paul, in terms of what makes for hope within a community, that whole sense of there is a social cohesion where people are working together. So I'll give an example from Birmingham. A very good friend of mine has been involved in addressing the issues of food poverty, which is a big issue across the country. And he's been trying to pull things together in Birmingham, work with Warwickshire Cricket Club. They set up a big place where they can gather food supplies. And so he's been talking to Christians in the first instance and getting stuff from all over Birmingham to be brought into a central hub that can then be distributed. But when the Sikh community heard about that, they said, well, why should we duplicate what you're doing so well? Can we work with you? And so the Sikh community started to work, and they've got a real culture of hospitality. And then the police heard about it and said, can we use police cars to help distribute food to people in need? And so you're going, wow, there's a coming together and partnering here where you're going, this is fantastic. We've never had this sort of partnering before. And so you start to create an understanding and a oomph that the hard situations bring out.
Wow, that's amazing. One of the things that I'm involved in is something called Faith and Police Together, which looks at how faith across the range of different faiths work together with the police on policing priorities. So that's certainly something that we'll celebrate within that network and forum, because I think faith community is often at the heart of communities. They understand the problems and logistics and dynamics of working within their cultural settings. And the police, you know, through the work that I do with Street Angels and CNI Network, I've found the police are so open to working with faith groups, and we need to be doing more of that, because at the end of the day, we're about the same thing. We want to see community cohesion, communities coming together, safer, more vibrant communities that everybody can be part of and feel safe in and enjoy, whether, you know, so.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges, you're absolutely right about community cohesion, and it's a big issue in Birmingham. But we need to have church cohesion to enable us to be effective in this. Because actually, when you start working with people of other faiths, you find that they're better at coordination than we as Christians are. And so from a Christian perspective, we've got to stop playing at little church and go, there is a big church that God has made, that God wants to flourish. And we've stopped it from flourishing because we played little church. And so that sense of a cohesion, what is the voice that the civic authorities can talk to when it comes to Christians? What are Christians contributing? Where can people join in with what is actually very, very good work, but is under the radar? And so this game of little church, you know why people play it, of course, but we need to be thinking in a different way. We need to have that kingdom perspective, that there is one church in Halifax, in Birmingham, in wherever, that should be representing the one Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. I mean, I've started calling, I'm not calling churches churches, but rather church communities, because that church community and that church community and that church community contribute to the church in the place. And I think that's key. And I think church is always people. You know, it's a people movement. Jesus came to love people, to save people, not to create a denomination or a structure or a building or a service or whatever. It's all about people, and it's loving people, it's connecting with people, it's serving people, it's just about bringing hope to people.
Absolutely.
Which then brings hope to communities, which then brings hope to places. So I think that's one of the great things about Movement Day and Gather. It's about changing the thinking of the local church to think wider than this is us in our small corner and that's them in their small corner. It's actually, we are the church for the town, for the place, for the borough, for the region, and let's think along those lines.
I think that's absolutely right. And one of the things that's really important to us at the moment has been bringing testimonies together, so that the stories of hope. Mm-hmm. Now, God is doing things, as you were saying. God is encouraging people, and it might be a small thing, but it's making a difference in a couple of people's lives. It doesn't have to be, a global or even a town-wide thing. It can be something very small, but God's enabling us to bring hope, and people desperately need hope. If I can bring hope to 2 or 3 people, I've done something good this week.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's all about people. You know, and the 4Ps is about people. Movement Day is about people. The church should be about people because God is about people.
Yeah, it's the Acts 2 thing, isn't it? And it is Jeremiah 29 of we're brought into a community to actually lift the sense of hope and optimism and peace in that community.
Yeah, and the church should be about that. You were talking earlier about praying, and the church should be the ones that are engaged in being the watchmen on the walls that pray for places, and if places have low aspirations, about praying the aspirations up, about praying hope into communities. Do you want to share a bit about that, or have I just shared it all?
No. I've actually, we have a group which I lead in Birmingham called Birmingham Watchers. So we've set a group of people who are on the walls and looking at what's going on. It includes the police chaplain, some people from different communities, others who are engaged in that. And we have a regular WhatsApp communication, and then we Zoom, and we're praying for the city together. And we've found it so important and so helpful. But then what we're starting to see is different neighbourhoods within our city beginning to take that prayer call forward. So in a place called Erdington in Birmingham, they've just done 7 days of prayer, where they've been out on the streets from different churches, about 40 to 50 people every night. We're praying for Erdington, walking the streets, praying blessing on their place, praying for peace on their place, and with a real expectation that as they come together as God's people, they're going to see that place impacted. Now we've got, I don't know how many it is, I should do, I think it's about 160 neighbourhoods in Birmingham. So we've done 1, so we've got a way to go, but I mean, we're really good to be praying it in the same way for all our neighbourhoods.
Absolutely, and if you know Birmingham, do pray for Birmingham and for the city and for every community that makes it up. Well, that's been fantastic. Do check out Movement Day. We'll put the website on here and link it on the Facebook post as well. Anything else to close with, Steve? Or
I think we've just got to keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. I mean, one of the scriptures that's important to me is when Joshua takes the people across the Jordan and tells them to keep their eye on the Ark of the Covenant and says, we've not been this way before. Be prepared to be amazed, but we've not been this way before. And I think that keeping our eyes on Jesus in the new is really the key thing.
Maybe that's a message as well to everybody. We've not been this way before. And this is totally uncharted territory.
Yeah.
But as a church, we should be the ones that are keeping our eyes, that have wisdom, that have vision, that bring hope, that bring love, that bring peace, and seek and pray for prosperity of the different places where we represent. Well, thank you very much, Steve. That's been great. And until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.